I hadn't read the complete agenda for the plenary sessions that were being presented, and she's obviously presenting tonight. So it seemed to me that she had something else that she had to do. And can you believe a president-elect of Rotary International having anything else to do but in Farmington Rotary Club meeting?
I think she's going to have a busy
really interesting thing, and it certainly follows our thoughts specifically to Erica, and that is that Erica is one of her great fans of Rotary International, and so she is virtually cheering Erica on for this part.
Yeah. I am too.
No doubt.
Okay, Lynn, since you were instrumental in getting Erica in on all of this, you want to do the introduction and we'll let Erica loose on us.
I would be happy to do that.
Thank you.
And an earlier comment about hand washing is interesting to me, particularly because about 10 years ago, I remember that Erica and some of her associates in the ambassadorial program put together a hand washing biograph. Which sounds like it has expanded a bit and into different areas about different subjects, but the idea of being able to see in writing in booklet form something that was meaningful to people that might not otherwise identify and participate in it. So that was kind of interesting. But anyway, I'm gathering that nearly all of you know Erica, at least to some extent. For those that might not know some of that background, Erica graduated from Farmington High School right here in our virtual hometown. We were certainly happy to associate with Erica even before her graduation because she was an interactor at Farmington High School, which was something else for the program and for Rotary International, because once you get on the treadmill of Rotary, wherever it starts, there's no end of places for you to express your interest in serving others and so forth. And so now Erica finds herself at Rotary International, heading up a great part of the grant processing about different things. And I'm not going to try to describe what she does because she's a lot better at that than I am. But just to thank Erica for taking some of her time to be with us tonight and sharing some comments with us. And at some point in time, Farmington Rotary will do a little bit more with Erica's departments. It's just going to take a little time.
Can I interrupt? Can I interrupt before you do the introduction? As usual, I forgot, and now I've remembered. Everybody has to be aware, especially Canadians, I think, that we are recording, and the recording of this will be put out on YouTube probably by tomorrow morning sometime. And if you're interested, if you like what was said and you want to share it with folk, point them to this. You'll see it. You see us publishing it. That will be out there. This recording will be out there. You're welcome to share it with anybody. They can come and watch it. It's open to the public, so we have no problem with sharing these. Thanks, Lynn.
Very good. Erica.
Thank you so much. It is so nice to be a part. The last time I was spoke at this Rotary Club meeting, I mean, golly, that was after I came back from my ambassadorial scholarship. So it was quite a long time ago. But I have to say there are some of my favorite people in this room because and you know who you are. They have been instrumental with really shaping, you know, starting with Lynn, shaping my involvement with Rotary. And I never dreamed I would be working for Rotary, honestly. And I didn't dream that way because I wasn't aware of the potential that Rotarians have in the space of water, sanitation, and hygiene. Until I started growing more in my career and recognizing how involved Rotarians are as civil society members in really important service, such as basic human rights, such as water, sanitation, and hygiene. And I didn't recognize that there's still a power, I still believe, that needs to be even unleashed even more. And I'll talk a little bit about that with some of our new programs that are coming out of the Rotary Foundation. So given that we have a nice intimate group today, I would love to have this more of a conversation. So if there's something that really interests you and you have more questions about, stop me along the way. This is not meant to be a university lecture. And if you want to be pointed in the right direction, Erica, where can I find this, et cetera, please let me know. I'll try to answer most of your questions. So what am I talking about today? As I'm going to be showing you a little bit of Rotary water, sanitation, and hygiene portfolio. As you know, we have 6 areas of focus, soon to be expanded to 7 areas of focus, as you all have received that announcement. And I'm going to be showing you how that portfolio has been doing since official launch back in 2013 with global grants. And where we are now, what are Rotarians learning with their projects? What has come about as a result of that? And there's some special initiatives that I think would interest you as club members, so we can talk about that further. And then lastly, I'm going to slip in.
Let me turn that on for you.
Okay, thank you.
You should have it now.
Okay, thanks. All right, let me bring up. All right, you let me know if the slides are not moving, because that unfortunately happened at a meeting that I had recently and nobody said anything. So, okay.
Nothing happened.
Yeah, so can everyone see this first slide? It says,
See the first slide.
okay, so I'm going to start off just giving you an idea of water, sanitation, hygiene, how we've been doing, some of the interest areas globally within Rotary. And for those of you that are working in water and sanitation already, this kind of will give you an idea of where your specific interests are fitting into the larger direction of where we're going. So to date, I would say that water, sanitation, hygiene is our second most popular area of focus, next to disease prevention and treatment. And you can see here, we're not too far away from disease prevention. It's a healthy competition we have at the foundation. I like that to attribute that to about Rotarians really having a significant amount of expertise and experience that gets them into the area of water, sanitation, and hygiene. And there's very tangible outcomes that result from WASH in the field. You're going to hear me refer to that as WASH from this point on. So to date, we've had around 1,626 grants, and an average grant is really averaging at around 72,000 now. Now, that really tells you where we've come, because in 2013, when I first came to the foundation and we started looking at what was being submitted and being approved, the grants were around 43,000. So what this means is that we're really starting to understand the need for more comprehensive approaches within water, sanitation, and hygiene. So we've been pretty steady. You can see since 2014, we've been slowly rising. It's been ups and downs that really are determined by weird things that are happening in the environment at the time. Most recently, we've had a community assessment requirement that was put into place last year. So as a result, our numbers did actually lower slightly from 2019 on to 2020, because that was an unexpected change a lot of Rotarians were not used to. But I think now they're very clear, or at least it's becoming more clear of what that expectation is. So this just gives you an idea of what are the main areas, most popular areas in water, sanitation, and hygiene that this expansive portfolio is covering. And I would say our most popular, water is still very sexy within the Rotary world. We love to provide and see that running water coming out and being available for communities, healthcare centers, and schools. So you can see here around 46 million has been invested to date within this area, followed closely by WASH in schools. We have a lot of educators that are working in basic education and literacy that have been teaming up with WASH professionals and then experienced WASH Rotarians to make this our second most popular area. And you can see here what follows. I would say sanitation is our fastest growing area, as people are realizing we still have over 2 billion people to date in the world without sanitation, safe sanitation services. That means they don't have necessarily a place to go, but they don't have also a place to collect and treat that excreta. And that's really disastrous for health, as we can all imagine. As part of our global grant portfolio, we're still giving graduate scholarships, which was similar to our old ambassadorial program, but now has been bundled as part of global grants. And these are some areas that I think Rotarians don't recognize that they can work in, is really watershed or resource management, which is predominantly my background, where you're looking to protect water sources, clean water resources, so that that can be of benefit for human use in the future.
That's my
And then irrigation, we do a substantial amount in solid waste management. We have a big uptick in interest in plastics, and plastics being disposed of inappropriately in the environment, which end up in our water supply. So we're now starting to see significant amount of work in the collection of solid waste, specifically like plastics, and then the upcycling or reuse of those plastics in local markets. So this has been very fascinating to see this portfolio grow in these different areas. So when someone asks me, Erica, what are the top areas in the globe where we've seen the most water, sanitation, hygiene activity, I would say Central America. It says the Americas, but in reality it's Central America. In Africa, it's mainly West and East Africa. In Asia, about 1/3 of our total grants that come into the foundation, this is across all areas of focus, come from India, believe it or not. They're a powerhouse, not only with giving, but also with receiving grant funding. And so I would say these are, in the Philippines is also another area which we have a lot of Rotary WASH activity. The scholarship area though, because I came from an ambassadorial scholarship, which was sponsored by this Rotary Club, I'm a big advocate for scholarships within the portfolio, but unfortunately this is actually one of the smallest areas of where our funding has been going to. And part of this is the lack of communication that has been happening among club members to potential scholars, especially in developing countries. And this is really a sad thing for me, because I recognize the true part of sustainability we have to always think about is investing in people rather than investing in things. And scholarships are a great way to do that, to build knowledge and skills for the future. So that kind of gives just an overview of what that portfolio looks like. I want to just give a preface to say that, remind you that all of the data that you just saw is only from global grants. And if you think of a big iceberg, the data that we're collecting is that very tip of the iceberg. So what you're seeing is the tip of the iceberg. We still have district grants. We have individually sponsored club projects. You're very familiar of all the different ways that Rotarians can engage in service, and that includes in water and sanitation and hygiene. So my job at the foundation, grant portfolio, is actually only about 20–25% of my total duties and responsibilities. So the other part of my responsibilities is really to build the capacity within Rotarians to make, amongst Rotarians, to really design solid, sustainable projects And then also to be able to show their impact. So I help with different things such as advising on project and program design, facilitating strategy sessions for larger programming. I also work to develop indicators or KPIs, those of you involved in business, for the foundation to really assess Rotary's impact. And I do this both from Evanston, or Chicago area, and then I travel, at least when we could travel, I travel fairly often to be able to be engaged on the ground the best that I can. So I want to just show you some of those to really develop the first set of policy statements. And policy statements, as you may be aware, help to define what sort of activities the Rotary Foundation is willing to promote and fund from the foundation. Cool. That's exactly what we want to see. And that actually leads me into this final part of the presentation. And I'm sorry, I'm going a little over time, so I'll try to wrap this up.
No problem. You have
Okay.
till 6 p.m.
No, okay. Just kidding. So that comment, Barry, was really important because where the foundation is going now, we've been having about 6-7 years now of working with the same model. We're now trying to elevate the type of projects that Rotarians are doing. We have what we call super users that have really figured out, you know, this project is working really well. It could actually be replicated. We want to expand it. We want to expand it to neighboring communities. We want to expand it in scope. Perhaps we also want to incorporate WASH, like we just heard with the discussion of the Rachel project, with putting water and sanitation information and embedding that within the Rachel project. That's exactly where we're starting to see Rotarians kind of maturing with their project development. And this has led us to really realize, you know, this is where we're going to have the greatest impact. And why do we care about that? Because one, we need to speak to all the efforts that we're putting in. And really, is it having an impact on the people that we're serving? There's no point in doing it if it makes us feel good. It's really about serving others, right? And we don't have a lot of evidence to show that. Not that it's not happening, it's just that we haven't been diligent about collecting information that will help, you know, give evidence to that claim. So we're starting to develop different programs to help Rotarians go to that next level of programming, which is programs of scale. And we have partnerships that are developing across the areas of focus, but being WASH, I'm only going to talk about our strategic partnership with USAID, which is the U.S. Agency for International Development. These two types of programs are focused on larger scope work, where we require that multiple clubs work together under an umbrella goal to really produce impact. And we take this information, verify it, and then we utilize it to show other organizations what type of work we're doing, such as UNICEF, USAID, DFID, all these types of organizations in the world are interested to really know, like, what is Rotary doing, and are they impactful in what they're doing? And that's important because we need support from partners, meaning their resources, financial resources, but we also need their help with expertise and partnering, because we cannot serve the communities around us alone, as we all know this. So this partnership has been in existence for almost 12 years, and we really focus on sustainable, safe water, drinking water, improved behaviors, and sanitation and hygiene, and also advocacy. We'll talk a little bit about what advocacy looks like. And this is all based upon the learnings we have from our polio model of where were we most effective in polio. It wasn't actually the distribution of vaccines, though yes, we had a huge presence there. Our greatest impact as Rotarians in polio was truly through our advocacy efforts, and that was sitting down with local decision makers, country decision makers, to really say, This is absolutely important and essential. We eradicate polio. We cannot do this alone. We need your ownership and leadership in country to drive the eradication efforts. And Rotarians were influential in that way. Incredibly effective. I love reading the polio story. There's a 3-book series you can actually purchase from the foundation that's fantastic. It lays out all the challenges as well as the successes we had with the polio program and how we can relate it to our other areas of focus. So we tried to do that with this partnership. We tried to combine not only what you think of with normal WASH implementation, but also WASH advocacy, which is trying to utilize our networks of relationships and vocational expertise of influence to influence decision makers, to recognize the prioritization that needs to be given for water, sanitation, and hygiene in order to best serve people. They say that WASH is actually the gateway to most of the other areas of focus. Without basic water and sanitation, it's very difficult to have education, the educational outcomes you're looking for. Without water, sanitation, and hygiene, it's very difficult to have diseases that you're trying to prevent if you can't even have basic survival of your that you need through water and sanitation. We can say that with all the other areas, but I'm going to let you make those links as well. This is also an opportunity to really allow Rotarians involved in this area to innovate. And this is through innovation of new partnerships, innovation of new processes. And I'll give you some examples of what that looks like. So this program, as I said, this is bigger scoped work. So we have $2 million coming from Rotary. And of this $2 million, we request that host countries and international partners, and if you're interested in participating in this partnership, there is lots of opportunities. I'm just putting that plug in. They have to raise around $200,000 of this $2 million. So this doesn't all come from the foundation. It comes from Rotarian pockets themselves as well. And then USAID will match to create a $4 million program per country that we do this partnership in. We have right now 2 active countries, which is Ghana and Uganda. We're recruiting now for a 3rd focal country. And it's a competitive type of, it's a competitive approach because of the amount of money that is at stake. So we have about 5 candidates we're looking at right now to make a final selection, most likely outside of Africa. One thing to think about is what has come out of this is a product that we can talk about is Rotarians teamed up with USAID to hire, statisticians, evaluation experts to create a WASH sustainability index tool. And this tool answers the question, is my project or program likely to be sustainable, likely to be in existence 5, 10 years from now? And sometimes that's because of you directly and the way you shape your program, but that's also determined by the environment in which you're working in. More unstable environments that don't have the support you may need is not going to make a very good likely story that your project's going to sustain itself. And I think you can think of already, of those of you who've been involved in service and project work, I think we all have a story of a project that we started and we invested in, and we can say today it failed. And I think what's important to think about is, why did it fail? And this tool helps you to identify those risk points that will put your project at risk. So this has been a very nice tool. And we utilize this tool 1 year after we do a service project or program, excuse me. And then 7 to 10 years later, we use the same tool to assess that program. And that's been, as you can imagine, very enlightening, because I would say still 50% of our programming that we have done in water, sanitation, hygiene within Rotary has had its challenges, meaning a lot of systems are non-functional. So we need to take responsibility along with our country partners to say, okay, what do we need to do better? If we're going to go forward, what do we need to do better? And I think that's a really powerful position to be in, because we're not alone. This is not only a Rotary problem. Like I said, we're recruiting a third focal country. These are the countries that are essentially making the cut. And we're really looking for things such as leadership, alignment with USAID missions, capacity. How much experience do clubs have working with each other? Are they doing their own small little projects independently, or are they working together? Our leadership, is leadership working together, or do we have new initiatives with every Rotary president or DG turnover? So those sorts of things are really important to look at. So now this is a resource that I think, even if you're not going to be involved directly with the partnership, I want to just say that this is going to be Rotary's first learning platform. And it happens to be in Wash, so I'm excited. This is going to be launched officially October 13th, and we'll make sure to give the plug out for it. It's an interactive microsite that's made for, of course, mobile devices. It not only talks about the partnership and our impact numbers. Yeah, that's great and very much interesting. But for me, I think which is even more valuable for Rotarians is the learnings. There's been a very formal way that we've been digging out the learnings of this partnership, such as how from USAID, it's been very difficult to work with with volunteers. Why? Because they need that level of consistency and commitment over 5 years, and that's very difficult with a volunteer mindset. So how have they been able to overcome that? On the Rotary end, it's been very difficult to work with development agencies like USAID because they have government contracts that need to be fulfilled. And Rotarians know, hey, I know a guy that does very good quality work in the procurement process over here. Why don't we utilize this person? And the U.S. government is saying, no, we can't do that. So there's a lot of pain points here that we've had to overcome. That also has to do with sustainability. Where have we gone back and things have been completely non-functional? Or we still have open defecation happening right outside the doors of brand new bathroom facilities that we've installed. So this is really going to be an engaging website, and I'm hoping a way for not only us to grow within the partnership, but more importantly within water, sanitation, and hygiene as a whole. I talked about the 2 focal countries. I talked a little bit about Ghana, and just to show you, the good thing about this is we're able to actually have impact data, which looks at not only construction, yes, but also things like behavior change. How many of the communities that we've been working in actually are certified open defecation free? That means that all of the households have recognized the danger that they're putting themselves in by continuing to have open defecation as a part of their daily routine, and that they've actually dug and found the resources themselves to create their own sanitation facilities. So this is just a small snapshot. So how does this work is you really need cooperation from a lot of different Rotary clubs, and I encourage you to just challenge yourself to think, how could this work in our district? Even if it's around a local issue you want to address. In Ghana, they rallied the support of 36 Rotary clubs for a 5-year commitment. And you can see in green those areas where Rotary clubs are working. And that really meant over 15,436 volunteer hours were put in. That's a lot, and especially when you put in value that, we're talking well over $5 million in in-kind contribution with Rotarian time. And that's impressive. We've been able to really recognize the importance of advocacy. So Rotarians recognized in Ghana that communities were not aware of their rights and responsibilities in terms of water and sanitation, and they weren't prepared with how to talk with local decision makers who should be taking responsibility of those services. So Rotarians decided to go apolitically into these communities and to district leadership, and I mean not Rotary district, you know, a government district, and really talk about this gap. And they started building leadership within government and building the ability to say, listen, why aren't these duties and responsibilities being fulfilled? Why do people still not have water and sanitation, even though this is part of your mandate? And then within communities, they had, okay, communities, you also have to take responsibility for services. When they're not working, what are you looking for? How do you talk with local decision makers? And then Rotarians became conveners of these two sides, almost mediators, to start bringing them together to really address these major challenges. To me, that's the power of Rotary, is really this position of influence and facilitation and collaboration. So really, as a result of this, 6 out of the 13 districts that Rotarians are working in, because of their actions, have resulted in increased allocation of funding for water, sanitation, and hygiene operation and maintenance from the government in their annual budgets. Where before they were only putting 1 to 2% of their annual budgets, can you imagine that, for water and sanitation services? Now some of those districts are putting between 4 to 5%. It doesn't seem like that big, but actually it is. When you talk about advocacy, small gains are actually result in big successes. So I'm so proud of this story of Rotarians in motion. And I think this also shows how we can impact in a lot of different ways. And finally, I just want to highlight COVID-19. As we know, COVID-19 has been on the tips of our tongues for God knows how long. So I think it's been an opportunity for Rotary. And I say this because even though we've been trapped in our own little communities, it's really shown how important it is to make water sanitation a priority. Not only in Africa, not only in India, but here even in our own backyard, right? Because of the lack of supplies, because of the lack of proper behaviors to wash our hands, to keep masks, etc., keep a good hygienic environment, we have struggled with COVID-19 right here in the United States. So you can say we're struggling with similar challenges, much like you see here with a rural hospital in Uganda. So it really makes us think, is that, have we really mastered this idea of water, sanitation, and hygiene here in the States? And if I even threw out a figure to use that 1.2 million people still do not have access to safe water and sanitation in the United States, I bet you'd be surprised. And I can give you the resource for that statistics. And I'm talking about areas like Navajo Nation, Appalachia, Southern Illinois, Northern Michigan. So there's particular areas that we need to be thinking about how water and sanitation, if we were addressing it as a true priority, we would be much more prepared to handle things like pandemics and disease transmission. So Rotarians have really made this more prominently known, at least what I've seen in the social media atmosphere within Rotary, about the importance of taking on this within their local communities, especially in healthcare facilities, but also in developing countries. So I think there's a commonality here we should see and be aware of. I think it's a learning that we shouldn't get too comfortable that we have this down. And I think it'll always make this area of focus for me the most important area that we should all have at the front of our minds almost every day when we wake up in the morning and utilize this very precious resource. So with that, I want to just say thank you so much for your time, and I hope you've been inspired a lot, not by me, but by the Rotarians out there that I am trying to exemplify what they're doing And it's really awesome to truly just be a part of the whole organizational structure. That's incredibly powerful. So thank you very much for your time.
That was wonderful, Erica.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I have one question to kick us off. A non-Rotarian friend of mine, we were discussing Rotary and Rotary giving and what Rotary does. And he was pushing back on the idea that Rotary gives money to water projects, digging wells and sanitation and so on, outside of the United States, and had no knowledge, and neither did I, to support it, to say that we do work like that within the United States. And I had nowhere I could go to look up information like that, so I could at least say, yes, we do, and here's some examples.
Mm-hmm.
I want to jump in with that one, Erica. Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Erica's been helping me. Prairie Rotary has a grant right now. It's just a district grant to bring hand washing stations to Navajo Nation and indigenous people in the United States. So it's just starting out, but it's that's the beginning of what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. And so those general statistics I try to compile. I do that not only for our larger programs like you saw with USAID, but I do it for, I keep my ears out as best as I can through folks like you, through our grant officers, through just being a part of the WASH sector. When I hear unique examples of what we're doing. So I think what you're saying, Phil, is like, it would be great to have access to the data, but also the stories, right?
Well, stories
the narrative, yeah, so that you can put the picture to what that looks like. Like, what does it really mean to have a volunteer actually involved in a very technical sector? What does that look like, you know? And actually, they can have a huge impact. Just because you're not an engineer, you can actually have a huge impact. And you can see that with what Eileen just kind of presented, even just in our own backyard. So we do have those statistics that we're pulling together now. And then I've made a very conscious effort to start pulling narratives and almost like case studies, I guess is what you'd say. And I'm collecting that not only for the USAID partnership for that microsite, but also as a depository for folks like you that are looking for maybe a more formalized look at what we're doing in Navajo Nation. This is really awesome. We're doing some amazing work in Colombia that I just found out about. We're doing plastic waste reduction out of waterways in South Africa. Incredibly inspiring story about how these Rotarians who are working in areas where the government themselves have deemed it's too dangerous to go in. Rotarians have, because of their reputation and being nationals, are able to enter these communities to really address this idea of plastics in the environment and our waterways. It's just awesome stuff. Unfortunately, Rotarians are their worst advocates for themselves. They don't talk about themselves. So, you know, it's really like pulling teeth out. But once we have
all the time.
Yeah. So if you want those sorts of things, just let me know. Send me a formal email.
I'll do that.
erica.gwynn@rotary.org.
Yeah, you mentioned even up in Upper Michigan.
Yes.
Those are great examples to be able, and all the programs you mentioned here would be a great kickoff with us and Lynn to go back to the schools and get kids involved, because I'm sure if you want to ask them which was most important, they'd probably come out with environment very near the top, if not the top.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Could I ask a question from sort of an opposite viewpoint, from a non-American viewpoint?
Mm-hmm.
For one thing, I always love listening to you, Erica, because you're so knowledgeable and your ideas are so well organized. But somebody outside the U.S. seeing Rotary teamed up with USAID will then therefore identify, Rotary has the reputation of being an international organization, but when you're teamed up with USAID, and I don't know about USAID, but I know CETA, for example, there's an awful lot of tide aid requirements, and I would assume you really don't want to get into tide aid when you're dealing with a Rotary project. How do you avoid the optics of of seeming to be part of the U.S. government and therefore Rotary being part of the U.S. government? And also, have you done anything with CETA?
Yes, so CETA we've approached. We're actually in discussions with them right now as a result of our USAID partnership. So the honest truth is that most oftentimes development organizations, especially major donors like the German government, such the UK, CETA, whatnot, it's really difficult to convince them that this could be a viable partnership. They're so bureaucratic and there's a lot of reporting requirements that they're just like, this could be a headache. But what we have been fortunate enough is that USAID was willing to be flexible at the time that this was initiated, which allowed us to really explore and try to recognize, okay, this can't be successful unless, for example, we have a significant budget put aside to build the capacity of Rotarians so that they can actually perform with a large agency like that. And that's a learning that we've got out of that. Most agencies wouldn't allow that learning, and especially financing for that learning. And so as a result of that, we have something to show. So when we have these discussions with VIZ or CETA, they're more open to the idea. So the reputation of the U.S. government, especially during times of administrations that are more difficult and perceived more difficult overseas, they take more of a backseat role in the partnership, and they really utilize it as Rotary's show, because believe it or not, their aim is truly to create national self-reliance. It's called building self-reliance within country. That's a big thing, I think, across the globe right now, is trying to build self-reliance because the old charitable giving model is not sustainable. And what better way to do that by having nationals working with nationals, and Rotarians are nationals in their countries. We're not an outside organization coming in. So what they do is they go more in the background. This administration, that's definitely what they've been doing. So there's been a better opportunity and reception of the partnership if it's led by Rotary.
So in other words, USAID is taking advantage in a way, and I don't mean that negatively, of Rotary's international
reputation.
facade.
Yep.
Optics.
I think Richard
very
had a
good.
question or a comment.
Yeah, I'm in the Ypsilanti group, and I've talked to a lot of people in Ann Arbor and other areas in our district, and they're talking about Flint. They're talking about PFAS concerns in Ann Arbor and other areas. How do you get them to say, well, we want to concentrate on these other areas, and they want to sit there and say, well, what about Michigan? What about these areas where they don't have clean water?
I would say really the best approach is working in both areas. Because first of all, for us not to address water and sanitation issues in our own backyard, I agree with them that it really needs to start first locally. But at the same time, there's incredible benefit to also be working in other countries as well in the same area of water and sanitation. The reason being is because the challenges are, believe it or not, are almost absolutely the same. The issues that cause the issues with Flint, as we recognize as that onion keeps getting unpeeled, ends up being very tightly linked with government, regulation, transparency, accountability, which are the principal challenges that almost every single country that we're working in right now for water and sanitation is dealing with, just under different clothes. And what I think that is really important is that commonality brings people together. That's why fellowship is very important. And that's where there can be exchange of information. There's a camaraderie about helping one another out. A great example I like to give is that with all the work that we're doing in India, a lot of American clubs, diaspora, are actually working with projects in India. But now what we're starting to see is that those same clubs in India, recognizing the challenges here in the United States, have been the international sponsoring club for projects here in the United States. And that wouldn't have happened if we only had that mindset. I would bring to them that story. If we only had the mindset to only work within our local backyard, I think we should be working in both, because it benefits our immediate backyard as well as our sisters and brothers overseas. We really are living in more of a globalized world. And again, I just see such great benefit. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of other examples too, from Brazil, from the Philippines, from Taiwan, who are the primary sponsors now of major projects going on here in the United States. And it's a humbling spot, I think, for Western cultures to also recognize that we have a lot of things to work on ourselves, and that we need to be open to suggestions and ideas.
I think this has been an excellent conversation. Focused on the work that you do and who you are. I can't compliment you enough on taking your time today to spend an hour with us and talk about partnerships and service, local and otherwise. I think you have a tremendous grasp of what is needed and even how to go about it. And the rest of it then comes to the individual Rotarian accepting one of the areas that they're interested in and promoting it because of the understanding you have and have shared with people around, well, a big area, both local and international. So I sincerely thank you for spending the time today. I'd like to also thank everybody for their attendance and ask only that you share the information, tell your friends and acquaintances how they can access Erica's comments by going, unfortunately, to our website and our library. But that's a good thing. That was my first backdrop, was my home library, if you will, and put all the stuff together. And, people ultimately have to learn on their own, but they've got to have the inspiration to get started. And today you were certainly inspiring. So thank you very much, Erica.
Oh, thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you, Erica.
I'd like to also thank the Farmington Rotary for stepping up to bring Erica. This is a small Rotary club, and look what you have for your speaker. Thank you.
Just so that I understand, and the rest of us, so when did you get Erica going within Rotary, Lynn? Bill?
Give or take a few years of 1995.
Yeah, around there, yeah.
Is that what it is?
A couple of years before that, because she was an active interactor at the time.
That's hard to believe. That's 25 years ago. Whoa.
Oh, go ahead. Rub it into Erica.
That's what Erica says too.
Yeah,
A wonderful example to young folk.
Yeah, it's really great. And I really, again, encourage, actually, that's one of the best places to start, is having the Interact and Rotaract still be actively engaged alongside everything you guys do. Because I've seen, look what it did for me. And then, but also, I mean, I just see that within all of our projects, and what drove this area of focus for the environment to be created was actually this enormous like voice that came up from not only Rotarians themselves, but also our younger Rotary members. You know, we're talking interactors, we're talking Rotaractors, really coming to the forefront saying, you know what, this is a shame that Rotary is not showing their commitment in this space. I thought that was incredibly inspiring. So, and maybe it's showing where we're going to be going. Who knows? You know, but yeah, they're everywhere.
Erica did one other thing that was a bit unique. I think, I don't know that I can back it up with statistics, but I think Erica was the first ambassadorial scholar who did her whole program on site in the classroom. She went to a small lake area in Mexico and did her water quality studies and research, based upon that lake. And so her ultimate success in completing the ambassadorial scholarship was all based on out of the classroom, hands-on, dirty, wading in the dirty water in order to put it all together. And, sometimes I think, okay, classroom instruction is fantastic, but there's no way better to learn than getting dirt under your fingernails. And Erica had her share of that. So
we're waiting on your book, Erica.
Well, Erica,
everybody's writing a book. Why not Erica?
well, Erica is a real success story. There's no
There you
question
go.
about that.
Totally agree.
With the club, right straight across from Interact, Rotaract, ambassadorial scholarship, and now manager of an area focus of RI.
Well, I followed my own advice because way back when I used to say to all the interactors that I was in the district selling the program to the Rotarian liaison for the individual clubs, get your Interact club started and then get out of the way. And we pretty much did that with the Farmington group. They did their own projects, decided what they wanted to do and how they wanted to do it. And all just pushed them along now and then when we thought that momentum might have been slowing down. But here is the best example of what our efforts could produce. And so all we need now is about another dozen or so Ericas.
Yeah, and in any way that I can support any Rotary and Rotarians and what they're doing, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, because we do have a variety of resources. And like I said, it's really great to be up with the latest and greatest happening in Rotary. It's really nice to be like, oh, there's an area of the focus of environment. Did you know this? And they're going to be covering this sort of thing. I mean, it really helps because you all talk a lot and you have a lot of fellowship. So you help that communication to get out. A lot of people didn't know we had a partnership with USAID. A lot of people didn't know that we are expanding into the environment. A lot of people didn't know that we are working not only in our own backyard with projects like Navajo Nation and whatnot, but we're also working in amazing work overseas. Believe it or not, all that is not known universally. So I really appreciate you spreading the word. Reach out to me if I can help in any way. And I'll send you some of these PowerPoints as well, Phil. And
I'll send them out to everybody.
Yeah, okay, do that.
Yeah. Next time, though, I hope we can have wine and cheese somehow, even if it's virtually.
Yeah. Well, we'll be having one in about an hour.
Okay.
We'll have another one with international wines where you can buy them, whether you're in Chicago or Detroit or wherever you happen.
Oh, I like that.
Because we've proven the fact that we can get people from Chicago to come and visit us with our meetings, why not have some wine fun with that?
Why not? I think it's a great idea.
Here it is. We'll be sipping a little bit later.
All right.
See some of you later.
I think that should probably wrap it up unless there's any other urgent question.
That's all I had.
Thanks for inviting me.
Remember, it'll be available in the morning. I'll try and send it out to everybody to let them know that this recording is available. You can go through it, catch the points you missed, write down the notes you forgot to take. Give it to everybody else to see, let your club see it. Use it as a presentation one week if you can't find another speaker. Tell them you've got an expert coming in from Chicago.
There you go. Zoom makes everything possible.
It's possible. Thanks, guys.
All right, take care.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.